house up in his bedroom. My brother took that home and he took out a number of comments, didn't name them, just made comments. So there were people from his younger childhood when we used to live in Dublin before I became a Kildare person. So everybody had something to do, and I read a piece from John O'Donoghue.
Right.
And so John it was really actually beautiful. Yeah, he's a fabulous poet.
So the whole service take place in this community centre?
It took place, and my sister-in-law sang, and oh my goodness, one of the local lads had put speakers up outside.
Right.
So the whole courtyard was filled.
Isn't it amazing that you're aware of it too? Because I imagine when it was happening, were you conscious even just to be, like you're remembering stuff like that, but when I'm at a funeral and I see the immediate family up at the front, I'm just assuming that they're just in their own little world. But you were obviously experiencing everything that was around it and really appreciating that community thing. And that's an Irish thing, isn't it, really? This whole funeral thing. Incredibly
so.
What if it happened, now, if it had have happened, the tragedy that happened in your life, what if it happened in 1955? Different story.
Do you know, it would have been very challenging because suicide still carries a weight. It carries people are still feeling shame. I spoke to somebody very recently who said there's a shame that still goes with it. And I understand that shame. I feel that too. Now, my shame is not to do with society and cultural perspective as much as it is to do with my feeling of shame as a parent.
Yes.
I missed it. We're back to what you said earlier. What in the name of God was I doing that I didn't see something going on that was at that level of serious? I saw what I would have classified as a yellow flashing light, not even for our weather warnings, not even really orange. He was talking to the school counsellor. I knew that. We'd set that up. And then she got sick and I had asked a private counsellor to speak with him and he said yes, but that never got to happen.
That's your battle, isn't it? I mean, that was your battle.
That's been my battle.
To understand that thing. And it still is your battle.
Yeah.
And it will be.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side where we're referring to 1955, and we could do another podcast on Ireland. I did actually a play that was kind of connected with the killings, which is where the bodies used to be put of women who might have left their husbands or babies that weren't baptised. The killings were like unmarked burial sites, and they're littered throughout the country.
Oh my word!
Crossroads usually, because that's where the crossroads are associated with the next world and this world intersecting and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'd like to learn more about that, in fact.
But it's only fading away from Irish society in the last 20 years, really. There was some suicides when I was going to school, and even when I was going to school, and when I remember there was a suicide in my school, and it was not talked about. It wasn't mentioned. It wasn't even, the word suicide never came up.
Yeah.
So it's hard to speak about it because this is there's a part of me that still wants to keep it secret. Even though I think it's a healthy thing to communicate the word suicide and make it part of our vocabulary, but it's still, there's always going to be a part of me because I grew up with it that wants to hide from it. So yeah, being a teenager in Ireland back then would have been extreme. If you were if you were doubting your thought process or anything like that.
Or if you felt different to anybody else.
Do you know? Immigration. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Get on a boat and get out of here.
So moving on then, you started the book when, 2014-ish? 13,
exactly,
14?
around 2014.
And then you launched it in 2016. I was at the launch. The one and only Brezzy from County Westmeath launched it. How did that happen?
That was, Brezzy had a relationship with my brother because my brother is an A&R guy.
Is that scandal? I thought you were going to give me some scandal.
Yeah,
relationship with your brother?
No, not quite that kind of scandal. So he was in the Blizzards, and my brother had a lot to do with the band The Blizzards when they first started. And Brezzy also had his own battles with mental health issues.
Of course.
And his own book is a fantastic read. Me and my mate Jeffrey, I read it. So he had an interest in what I was speaking about, and he was quite upset for my brother when his nephew had died by suicide. So he was very willing to come and launch the book. I had a couple of chats with him before it, and it was great. I mean, now some people openly admitted they were only there to see him. I accept that.
That wasn't me.
No.
I think I just want to finish on the book launch and on the book. So was it a difficult process for you to try and get the book out there once you had it finished? How did it feel to have it finished first?
Well, do you know, if I hadn't had the luck of meeting a friend of my other brother's who I had known years ago, his name is Johnny Connolly, and he came on board, and I was sending him chapters from Thailand, and he was saying this has to get out.
Great. That's a great encouragement to have.
He was amazing. Yeah. He took it under his wing to help me.
How likely was it to be left under the sofa?
It might never. It might never. First of all, I knew nothing about the world of books, and publishing and trying to get. Now, I tried to get a number of publishers to publish me, and they didn't. Some of them said. One of them gave me the best feedback ever and said had the potential of Eat, Pray, Love, which I thought meant they were definitely going to sign me, but they didn't. Okay. So I was like, oh, okay. Wow. But anyway, so I self-funded through funded.ie.
Well, in my experience of that kind of world, if you get a reply, it's a good thing.
Yes, I got it. And most of them replied, and he kept saying that to me, this is a good thing. Yeah. But then he said to me, would I consider self-publishing? And I did. Yeah. And so Kazoo are a great self-publishing organisation, and I went with them. And I fundraised through funded.ie. Right, yeah. And that was even so daunting. I was going, oh my God. Yeah. The most amazing experience of being exposed was the day I got my book published in my hand. And I said, I actually had to go out of the house and go to the woods. And I remember the publisher woman ringing me, and I said to her, I feel like I'm on Grafton Street and I have no clothes on. And she said, I know what you mean.
Okay,
I felt so exposed because my writing is very personal.
You can get away with it in music, you see. You could just pretend that the songs are about someone else. You know?
Yeah. And I was telling my story of grief and bereft and upset. And
was there any point before the book was officially launched where you went, oh, I don't know about this?
Yes, but I kept saying, I feel like I've so much support, I couldn't not do it. Yeah. Because things were coming in and happening.
Yeah, it was happening organically, naturally, whatever.
And because I knew that there's some humour in it. People were saying, I laughed out loud, I couldn't put it down.
That's important.
I cried. Yeah. Now, you will possibly find it emotional as a read, but it's also got those other qualities. Yeah. So it isn't just a big, heavy, sad tale. There's me coming through the other side, my family, you know.
Yeah, okay. And then your book is out there and it's on the shelf, and there's another 1,000 books in a similar category. I don't want to use the word self-help, or I don't want to use any other word, because generally these genres or these categories are not doing justice to the individual books, I find. But there is something that's happened in the last few years regarding mental health, and especially in Ireland, really. A culture of people talking about mental health, people talking about anxiety, people talking about depression. And what's your view on where that's going? And do you have any concerns about where it's going? I'm talking about have we gone full? This is probably a controversial question. Have we gone full circle in the sense of we went from a state of hiding our feelings, suppressing our feelings, which is a general consensus, you know, partly to do with the church, partly to do with whatever happened in Ireland. We didn't talk about our problems, to a society where we must get attention continuously. In some cases, maybe social media, especially amongst young people, in order to get attention. A quick way to do that is to say, there's something wrong with me. Do you think that there's a possibility of it going kind of jaggedly in another direction? And I don't mean this to criticise what's happened. I'm just saying that, you know, it's almost every time I turn on the radio now, it's somebody talking about having depression, is there a possibility that that the real issues get lost in this kind of celebrity, you know, I've got issues stuff? You know,
I think there's a real possibility of that. I think that particularly when we live in a society whereby instantaneous gratification is what we need, sound bites. We're having sound bites about everything in our lives, and most people live their life through the medium of social media. So there's very little grounding in reality there. And it's almost become, in some instances, and let me just say not all, that it's almost become the thing to do or have. And there are people who, no matter what, we're human beings. Some people will attach themselves to something because it sort of makes sense of what they're going through. And then there are so many people who are grappling with, trying to manage their thoughts, trying to deal with their sexuality, say, for example, or their tendencies and leanings. So my feeling is the openness is a really good thing. But what I think you're saying is, has the pendulum swung so far where it's so much talked about?
Well, yeah, and I know what you're saying, but I'm probably thinking more in young people. I think if you're talking about sexuality thing, we both agree that it's great that people are open about stuff, but I wonder sometimes, because I work in schools sometimes with teenagers, and when I was a teenager, I wanted to stick out. I wanted to get attention. I wanted people to wonder what. And maybe it was the actor side of me, or I don't know, but I think it's part of being a teenager. And sometimes I wonder if you're asked, have you got anxiety, people are going to say yes, because it's almost like it's, as I said, the full circle. And if you say yes, does that mean that you have to start inventing problems for yourself, or make things overcomplicated for yourself? And that sounds quite rough and crude, and I know that it's not everybody, but I think that there's a possibility of the simpler things, the simpler solutions that were there for hundreds of years, getting lost in this need to build up big problems for yourself almost. And I'm not saying everybody, but I'm just saying that it is possible that you can maybe invent, for want of a better word, a bigger situation than it's there. Do you get me?
I do. Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a risk of that happening. I think there's definitely a need to come back to basics, come back to what's the simple solution, what's the simple life trajectory. And I think what you're talking about, though, is that so many people, or particularly young people, it's, your search for identity is in your teens. You kind of know, you kind of turn away from your parents. You're looking for who you are.
For you to ask a teenager, look, just be who you are. They don't know who they are.
No.
So they're going to take a shot at anxiety, or take a shot at gay, or take a shot at whatever. I'm not saying everybody, as I keep repeating, there is people who is the fact that we live in a society where somebody does feel gay or is gay, that they can say they're gay, is a great thing. But are we asking too many questions of teenagers to try and say, who are you, when they don't know themselves?
They actually
maybe
don't
relax
know.
things.
Yeah. It's okay to be confused and not be sure, and not know where you are and who, and to move with one group and then feel like, actually, I'm not sure I'm still aligned with their values, so I move somewhere else. Or I seem to fit under this umbrella because I have thoughts that in moments are dark. It doesn't mean I'm depressed.
Yes, yeah, and I think I think it's a group mentality almost. Like it's a generalistic kind of way of seeing things, where this is the depression group, this is the anxiety group. Like there was a statistic released nationally there a month ago saying that a survey has been done amongst young people between the ages of maybe 13 to 23, and it shows that there's a huge increase in anxiety. And I'm kind of thinking, well, the word anxiety didn't really exist before, 10 years ago, really, in the way it does now. So how do you measure that? So is this kind of friendly stuff for the media to just throw out? And then if it's thrown out there, there's teenagers look at these headlines and go, oh, I'm part of the anxiety culture. Without, maybe they should be choosing for themselves, maybe more as I think
there's so much more knowledge now, because we can access information from all over the world all of the time, young people particularly, and us, we're starting to know about things we didn't know existed before. Like you say, it was easier hide. You could hide a suicide years ago. You can't hide it now. People know that there's something going on. So teenagers are left trying to manage their way through this absolute landmine of feelings, behaviours, hormones, expectations. There's massive expectations, and those expectations come through Instagram and whatever mediums they use. So they're left really trying to identify with what's going on. And I do think anxiety has increased, because I don't know that there's ever been so much uncertainty in the world, before COVID even. There's no simple plan anymore. People seem to have broad tapestries of possibilities. It's so broad, And
the most vulnerable in this new world are the younger people, because we can say, well, I remember the time where we didn't have the internet. People like my age and older can just say, right, I'm just going to switch off the phone for a while. Yeah. Teenagers might find it harder to do,
Much harder to do. And therefore then they start to feel anxious, they're not measuring up. Part of being a teen is finding that you don't feel like you're measuring up. So you try and identify with somebody that makes you feel good about yourself, which is possibly a peer or a trend. And therefore... Like
Instagram, for example, is I use it a little bit, but this is the bigger one for the younger generation. I see it like a stage that's constantly following you around, right? So you're just like... if you have anything to show off, it's just following you around. And if you're feeling a bit down, you're like, oh, I'll just jump on this stage and maybe people will cheer. And if they don't cheer, I'll feel bad, but I'll take that risk anyway because I'm a teenager and of course I'm going to take that risk. So, like,